In the early 18th century, in the fertile delta of Sindh, a Sufi saint did something extraordinary. He looked at the age-old exploitation of the peasants and declared it a spiritual crime. He didn't just preach love for God, but organized love into a powerful, practical system, a commune, based on collective farming and shared harvest. His story is where mysticism meets revolution, where the prayer mat is laid upon the soil, and where the cry of God is everything became a rallying call for economic justice. Shah Inayat was a saint who was besieged by empires, not for heresy but for suggesting that the fruits of the earth belong to those who till it. Our story begins in the late 17th century in the settlement of Jhok near the ancient city of Thatta in Lower Sindh. Shah Inayat came from a line of respected spiritual figures. His grandfather was Shah Abdul Karim of Bulri, a revered Sufi. He was well versed in the Qadiri Sufi tradition, known for its scholarship and piety. He was a man of God, a teacher, and a guide. The Timurid Mughal authorities, recognizing his spiritual status, had granted his land the status of Madad-e-Maash, or revenue-free land intended for the upkeep of religious scholars and institutions. He could have lived a life of quiet contemplation, fully respected and supported by the Timurid Mughal state. But Shah Inayat's spirituality was not of the quiet kind. His mystical insight led him to a revolutionary social principle. He preached and practiced the concept of Hama or Wahdat al-Wujud, that God is immanent in all creation. If God is in everything, then it must apply to every peasant, every landless laborer, in every grain of wheat they grew but never got to keep. Shah Inayat declared that the land he controlled would be worked collectively. The harvest would not go to a single landlord or even to him as a spiritual leader. It would be shared equitably among all who worked it, the fakirs and the peasants alike. He established a thriving commune in Jhok. It was a sanctuary. Peasants, burdened by impossible debts and the tyranny of local vaderas, also known as landlords, began to flock to him. In Jhok, they found not just spiritual solace, but material dignity. They were haris, meaning tenants no longer. Now they were co-participants in a divine endeavor. The fame of this revolutionary experiment spread like a wildfire across the districts of Lower Sindh. A powerful, dangerous idea took hold of many minds. If it works in Jhok, why not everywhere? The peasants on the lands of neighboring feudal lords began to murmur, then to demand. They wanted the way of Sufi Shah Inayat. The saint's peaceful commune had lit the fuse of a peasant revolution. The success of Jhok was a direct threat to the entire feudal order of Sindh. The landlords saw their control and wealth slipping away. A coalition of powerful figures, including Sayyid Abdul Wasi, Sheikh Sirajuddin, and others, appealed to the Mughal Subedar of Thatta, Mir Lutf Ali Khan. Their complaint was about economic sedition. Shah Inayat and his fakirs were mischief-making by preaching collective farming. Initially, the governor was hesitant. Shah Inayat's land was legally protected, a grant from the emperor himself. So he gave the landlords a tacit permission. Deal with the Sufi yourselves. Emboldened, the landlords gathered their militias and launched a sudden attack on the peaceful town of Jhok. They were met not by an army, but by a community defending its home and its freedom. In a shocking turn, the landlords were defeated disgracefully, though not without loss of life in Jhok. However, this first victory was monumental. The peasants had stood their ground. The heirs of those killed even took the landlords to court and won. The Timurid Mughal court in Delhi, upholding its own authority, fined the landlords and awarded their lands to the victims' families. For a glorious moment, justice, both spiritual and legal, seemed to be on the side of the people. The movement swelled. The cry of Hama rose from every corner, and more of the poor found protective refuge in the shadow of this man of God. The system, however, was going to strike back. In 1716, a new and ambitious Subedar arrived in Thatta, Nawab Azam Khan. The landlords, already furious from their legal defeat, swarmed him with complaints, framing Shah Inayat not as a social reformer, but as a political rebel, claimant to the throne. It is said that Azam Khan, a proud noble, also had a personal grudge from a perceived insult. The story goes that once when Azam Khan went to meet Sufi Shah Inayat, the fakirs who followed the saint stopped the Timurid Mughal governor at the entrance. They told him that Shah Inayat was busy with his devotional and religious activities. When they finally met, Azam Khan told Shah Inayat it does not behoove an ascetic to have guards at his door. The quick-witted Sufi replied, "It is appropriate, so that some worldly dog may not enter." Azam Khan was probably not amused by this attitude. The combination of feudal pressure and personal dislike was lethal. Azam Khan wrote to the Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar accusing Shah Inayat of rebellion. Without investigation, the emperor issued a fateful order: crush the rebels at the point of the sword. What followed was one of the most poignant conflicts in South Asian history, the military siege of a Sufi commune. In late 1717, Nawab Azam Khan assembled a vast coalition force. He called upon all the nobles of Sindh, most significantly Mian Yar Muhammad Kalhoro, the powerful ruler of Bhakkar, who brought a formidable army with cannons used to kill elephants. They were also joined by every local landlord with a score to settle. This army, described in contemporary letters as greater than ants and locusts, descended upon Jhok. Jhok was not a military fortress. It was a settlement of farmers and fakirs, surrounded by simple mud ramparts and a water-filled ditch for irrigation and basic defense. The defenders, perhaps 2,000 or 2,500 strong, were armed with little more than faith and wooden weapons. Facing them was the combined military might of the region. Shah Inayat was a man of peace. He is said to have expressed his sorrow at the coming violence, stating he had not entered the bazaar of love for such conflict. When his followers suggested a preemptive strike, the God-conscious Shah did not allow forestalling. He would defend but not attack first. The siege began in earnest. The nobles' army set up camp a mile away. Then, on the night of 12th October in 1717, the defenders of Jhok made a stunning move. In a daring night attack, around 1,700 fakirs and peasants on foot silently infiltrated the enemy camp. They fought with desperate courage, causing significant casualties and killing several prominent landlords and commanders. It was a defiant roar that proved their spirit was unbroken even if they were forced to retreat with heavy losses. The siege dragged on for months. A seasonal flood swept in, turning the land around Jhok into a lake, isolating the commune further, but also stalling the attackers. But the might of the empire was relentless. Reinforcements arrived, and the cannons continued their barrage against the mud walls. As the siege tightened, a treacherous offer was made. Nawab Azam Khan, perhaps tired of the prolonged conflict, proposed a truce. If Shah Inayat would surrender personally, the lives of his followers would be spared. It was the ultimate test, a choice between his own life and the community he had built. For Shah Inayat, there was no choice. The principle of Hama meant his life was not more precious than the collective life of his people. In an act of supreme sacrifice, he agreed to surrender. Accounts vary on the precise betrayal, but the outcome is etched in history. Upon leaving the safety of Jhok, Shah Inayat was seized. In 1718, after a show trial, Shah Inayat was executed. He was beheaded, earning the title Shaheed. Some legends say his head was paraded on a spear, others that his body was buried secretly by devoted followers. The commune of Jhok was shattered. But as with all true martyrs, the killing of the man could not kill the idea. In fact, it immortalized it. Shah Inayat's death planted a seed deep in the consciousness of Sindh and beyond. In the spiritual field, he remains a respected peer of the Qadiri order. His shrine in Jhok, which is near the modern Hyderabad in Pakistan, is a place of pilgrimage. He is remembered for his deep mystical knowledge and his embodiment of the Sufi ideal of annihilation of the self. In his case, this annihilation was not just in the worship of God, but in the service and sacrifice for his community, for humanity. He expanded the definition of spiritual struggle, Jihad al-Akbar, to include the fight against economic oppression. In the socio-political field, his legacy is that of South Asia's first major peasant revolutionary. He provided a theological framework for social justice, arguing that economic exploitation is a violation of faith in God's unity. Centuries before a modern socialism, he enacted a model of collective ownership and equitable distribution. He demonstrated that organized peasants could challenge feudal power, a lesson that would inspire future generations. In the 20th century, Shah Inayat was resurrected as a potent symbol by the progressive writers movement and leftist intellectuals in Pakistan and India. He was reclaimed as a folk hero, a symbol of indigenous resistance against feudalism and imperialism. His story speaks directly to the enduring conflicts over land, over labor, and over human dignity. He gave sanctity to the peasant's right to the fruit of his labor, turning Sindh from a land of devotion into one of revolution. He taught us that sometimes the most spiritual act is to share your bread, and the most dangerous idea is that everyone deserves a share.